Hello, IB students. We are starting a new topic today. This is topic 4, a review of statistics and probability, which you have hopefully learned in the past already. Today we're going to focus on statistics, and this will be a set of videos. So this very first video is going to focus on calculating statistical measurements of central tendency, things like mean, median, mode. Okay, so I am looking at our notes packet on topic 4, and I also have handy my formula packet from IB. I also have handy a reference sheet that I have created for you. It's probably a green piece of paper. Okay, so we're going to dive right into some examples, but you will see along the way there are certain skills that we're going to be reviewing, specifically how to find statistical measurements on our calculator, which is listed on that green sheet. We'll talk about the effects of change on measurements, metrics such as mean, median, mode. For example, if you're going to increase mean, median, and mode by changing all of your values by either subtracting or multiplying by something. And then you'll also find some samples of graphic representations of statistical data. On the reverse side of your reference sheet, we have some information about outliers, how to calculate outliers with an example. And then underneath that, sampling techniques. Okay, so we're going to dive right into this very first example. So the question says, given the following frequency distribution, find the median and then the mean. So in IB, sometimes you're given your data in a frequency table. Sometimes you are given your data in a list format, like example number 3. So we're going to start with a frequency table. And this would be a good example of something that they could ask on a calculator or a non-calculator test. I'm going to suspect that this one might be a calculator test, though. So if you want to find the median, we know from prior classes the median is the piece of data that lies in the middle. If you have an even number of pieces of data, it's the average of the two middle pieces of data. Well, when you're given a frequency table, the first thing we need to know is what our total quantity of pieces of data is. So we are going to sum up that frequency. So we're adding that bottom row, 5, 9, 16, 18, 20, and 7. And that is 75. So I'm just going to jot a little note here. That's what we call N. So our total number of pieces of data is 75. And if I'm being asked to find the median, we know that we're looking for the middle piece of data. If you have 75 pieces of data and I divide 75 by 2, we get 37.5, which means if you were to cut it in half, you'd have 37.5 in the first half, 37.5 in the second half. Well, obviously we can't have 0.5 pieces of data. So if we have an odd number of pieces of data, 37 would be on the front ends, and it is your 38th piece of data, which would be the center, and then you'd have another 37 on the back end. So we are looking for data number 38 in order to find our median. If you did not have a calculator, what we would want to do is find out where the 38th piece of data would fall if these were listed in order from least to greatest. So this frequency table is saying 5 different pieces of data are 1s, 9 different pieces of data are 2s, etc., etc. So I'm going to accumulate these. So it's basically like they're already listed in order for us. So 5 plus 9 would be a total of 14. 14 plus another 16 would be a total of 30. I have not gotten yet to my 38th piece of data, but if you add 30 plus 18, we get 48, which means that all of the pieces of data from data 31 to 48 are 4s. And I'm looking for data item number 38, which means it is a 4. So the median is 4. I am also going to show you how to do this on the calculator in just a moment. If we're asked to find the mean, there is a formula in your formula packet on calculating mean from a frequency table. And we know mean, you sum up all of your data and you divide by the number of pieces of data. If you're working with a frequency table, you take the value of each piece of data times its frequency. And you're going to do that for every X value. You're going to multiply it by its frequency, and you're going to sum that all up and divide that by the number of pieces of data. So for example, I'm going to come up here. I know that the number 1 exists 5 times. So if I were trying to sum that up, that would be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. The faster way to do that would be 1 times 5. And then I know that I have 9 number 2's. So 2 occurs 9 times, 3 occurs 16 times, 4 occurs 18 times, 5 occurs 20 times, and 6 occurs 7 times. That numerator represents the sum of all of my pieces of data if I had made one long list of all 75 pieces of data. And we're going to divide by the total quantity of data, which we already know is 75. So IB does recommend that you write this out. So now I'm going to calculate that answer on my calculator. So I'm going to set up my fraction. So 1 times 5 plus 2 times 9 plus 3 times 16 plus 4 times 18 plus 5 times 20 plus 6 times 7. And that is all over 75. And so we see that our mean is 3.8. By the way, the notation for mean is x with a little bar over it. Okay, so let me show you how to find this on the calculator. So let's say I was going to create lists. So I'm going to go to my stat button right here. And I'm going to edit. And I'm going to go to list 3 and list 4. Oh, if you need to clear out a list, just put your cursor on top of L3, hit enter, and it places you on the bottom line, and you hit clear. There's also a clear list option in the memory button. And so I'm going to drop in all of my my row 1 pieces of data in column 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to put my frequencies in column 4, list 4. So 5, 9, 16, 18, 20, and 7. And I have to remember what lists I'm using. So now I'm going to go to my home screen, and I'm going to go back into my list menu right here, and I'm going to choose to calculate. And my very first item is 1 variable statistic. So I am just working with 1 variable x. If you were ever working with 2 variables at the same time, x and y, you could use 2 variable stats. So I'm going to choose option number 1. And I have to tell the calculator where my list is. So I chose list 3 and 4. So the names of your lists are right above those number keys. So list 3 is above 3, so I have to hit my second key. And then for my frequency list, which is the next line item below that, I'm going to choose L4, which is above the 4 key. And then I'm going to calculate. And sure enough, that very first line item is your mean, which is 3.8. If you want to find your median, you'll notice there is an arrow showing you that there is more data down below, and there's your median, which is 4. So if this was a write down question, write down means you don't have to show any work, I would just drop my information in my calculator and then write down my answers. But if this is not a write down question, and if that mean question was worth more than 1 point, I would absolutely show this calculation here. Okay, so that is question number 1, and we worked that 2 different ways. You'll also notice while we're looking at the 1 variable stats, there are plenty of other statistics in here. So you can see your n value, n equals 75. That's the total number of pieces of data. Later on, we'll talk about standard deviation, but standard deviation of a population is that little symbol here, 1.3759, blah, blah, blah. The S with the X is called sample standard deviation. This is called sigma, which is my population standard deviation. The IB exam only ever works with population, so we will never use the S with the subscript of X, with the only exception of some of you might be using standard deviation on your math IAs. All right, for question number 2, question number 2 is showing you that we've got 4 numbers, A, B, C, D, that are in order. A is less than or equal to B, which is less than or equal to C, blah, blah, blah. And they're telling me the mean of the 4 numbers is 4. By the way, they're telling you each of these values falls into a category. That Z is the symbol for an integer. So these are all integers. So the mean of the 4 numbers is 4, the mode is 3, the median is 3, the range is 6. and they want us to find all 4 values. So I'm going to start with the median because I know that's where the middle value should be placed. And so I know that A, B, C, and D are placed in numeric order from least to greatest based on that inequality statement they gave me. And the median is 3. So the median is going to be smack in between B and C. But they also tell me the mode is 3, which means it occurs more than once. And so that tells me that both B and C, if the median is 3 and the mode is 3, that means B and C must be 3s. They also tell me that the range is 6. Well, the range means the difference between the highest and the lowest. So I'm going to make a little equation. So D minus A is equal to 6. And then the last piece of information they give me is that the mean of the 4 numbers is 4. So if I were to sum them all up, A plus B plus C plus D, and divide by the number of pieces of data, I would get 4. Well, I now know that B and C are 3, so I'm going to drop those in. 3 plus D over 4 equals 4. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to multiply by 4. So that's going to give me A plus, and 3 plus 3 is 6, plus D, 4 times 4 is 16. And then I'm going to subtract that 6. So A plus D equals 10. And I now have 2 equations that are relating A and D. So 2 equations with 2 variables means I can solve a system of equations. And so you can use substitution or you can use elimination. Let's say I was going to use substitution. If I were to solve for D here, I would add A over to the other side. And now I can substitute 6 plus A in here for D. So I would have 2A equals 4, A equals 2. So I now know I have 2, 3, 3, D. You can substitute 2 back in. 2 plus 6 is going to give me 8 for my final value. So I now know 2, 3, 3, 8. I would be very clear with what letter represents what number. So A is equal to 2. B is equal to 3, C is equal to 3, and D is equal to 8. Okay, so that is our first 2 examples, just looking at mean, median, and mode. Our next video will actually talk about quartiles and outliers, and we'll look at raw data and calculating values off of raw data. Okay, thank you so much for listening to our very first video on statistics.